Hello? Hello?
Hello. You can hear me? Yes. Wake up. Your time for sleeping is over.
Well, I think the way you approach a sequel to any game, but especially a game like BioShock, is you just have to ask yourself a few key questions. You say, you know, what did we not get to do due to time? What did we do but maybe not do to its full potential? And what are our crazy, wacky, out there new ideas that we've always wanted to realize?
BioShock 1, strange animal. Everybody comes away with a sort of very subjective take. And you wouldn't believe the kind of disparate personal anecdotes that we get out of our players and indeed their expectations for what comes next.
So one of the first things that we did, and this was Jordan's idea, when we all got out here, we finally, like, everybody had made their way across the country and we were all reunited again. So we started playing through the first game again as a team. Just sat there, we played through the levels, talked about what we thought was working, what we thought wasn't working, what we thought could be better, and used that as the jumping off points for discussions.
We spent a while way back at the beginning of the project talking about what we wanted to do with the environment, and we realized pretty quickly that we felt that BioShock wouldn't be BioShock if Rapture wasn't a part of it. So, there were some questions at the beginning as to whether we were going to go somewhere completely different. We ruled that out up front pretty quickly.
So the story of BioShock 2 begins several years after the events of the first game. Rapture is kind of changing rapidly. The kind of post-Darwin ecosystem that is kind of informed by this creepy slug and the stem cell-like material that's inside it that caused Rapture to fall apart has had a lot of time to revise its survival strategy. And so some of the city is flooding, and the splicers are having to kind of to really keep up with greater threats than ever before.
Rapture is a humongous metropolis under the ocean. You saw a tiny sliver of that in the first BioShock, but there were, hundreds possibly of locations that you haven't seen as part of the city of Rapture before. So we basically, brainstormed a bunch of new locations that would be fun to explore and fun to fight in, and would be interesting for the narrative arc of BioShock 2.
There were a lot of places that we couldn't build, whether it was a golf course in Rapture or just anything. And I think so. To me, it's with the sequel, it wasn't like. There wasn't really much of a feeling of scraping around for new ideas, because they come pretty naturally. It's just like, okay, well, here are like the 7 or 8 locations that you visited in the first game, and so yeah, what didn't we cover, or what do we want to revisit in a way that's going to be really transformed and meaningful,
And so in Bio 2, you actually move sort of laterally in that ecology into the role of a big daddy. In fact, the very first. And so that changes your relationship to the little sisters and to the splicers, and indeed to even the kind of weapons you can use.
Really the take that we've taken there is to try to get back to the feeling of first coming to Rapture, and try to inject some of that sense of wonder and mystery, and knowing that we absolutely have to hit that for players, because that's part of what people loved so much about visiting Rapture for the first time, is that there was so much that was just unknown and fresh, and it just slowly unraveled over the course of the entire game. And if it is just simply, hey, you're back in Rapture and here's some places you didn't go the first time, I think it would be disappointing to a lot of people. And so we focused a lot on how to bring that sense of wonder and mystery and surprise back to players, while still giving them a bit of familiarity for the location of Rapture.
I think this time around, the way I look at it is, it's been easier in that we don't have to answer a lot of fundamental questions about where you are and what it feels like to be there. So it really frees us to actually ask more important and subtle questions about, what does the world feel like after it aged? Is the city built out of skyscrapers? Is the city does it have tunnels in it? That stuff sort of just had to be very quickly decided on the first game, because it took us so long to kind of get things worked out. This time around, we can actually make some really educated decisions about some of those details that we glossed over on the first game.
Because you're a big daddy, you get this opportunity to go outside and explore the ocean surrounding Rapture. So that gives you the chance to see how time has changed Rapture, and some of the familiar locations have been reclaimed by the sea, and or will be involved with new game levels in a way that previously structurally, the architect never designed, but now the sea has other ideas.
The most exciting thing about underwater, I mean, is twofold. It's one, just being able to experience that world finally, and give people the opportunity to walk outside. And it was something we heard again and again, that people did want to just be able to see Rapture from the outside. And the other thing that it lets us do that we're really excited about is a little bit more downtime for the player and pacing. And at BioShock 1, Rapture was just such a constantly oppressive world, and the splicers were always there and always coming back. There were very few places where you did sort of know that you were safe and have a chance to catch your breath and sort of just explore and see some of the wonder of being in a city at the bottom of the sea. And there's that aspect of it that I think the underwater sections really help bring to BioShock 2.
So in BioShock 1, you followed this thread through several discrete kind of themed locations, but it was just one path intended to get you to Andrew Ryan. In BioShock 2, you're cutting a different swath through entirely new and hidden locations that were not important to that story, but are critical to yours and that basically are where you find out who you are and what was done to you, how you became the first Big Daddy.
When you think about Big Daddies, there's a certain set of associations people have with those, and I think especially when you play the first game and you listen to the first game, they're ponderous, they're slow, they plod through the halls, they're tired, really, and that was one of the ways we thought about them, because these guys have been on these circuits and doing this job for a really long time. And when you think about, I mean, for one, that is a very specific style of opponent, a very specific style of protagonist, and if that was all that was out there, is that interesting enough?
So choices in BioShock 2 are kind of comprised of three strata. The most obvious is the growth of your character. So the plasmid system is changing, your familiar plasmids now have new usages. So if you're going to invest in Incinerate, say, the first version is just snap and a guy, immolates, right? The second version is you can charge up a huge ball of fire and then blast several guys at once. And the third is this incredibly powerful spray of flame. Each plasmid has that same set of new contexts, new tactical kind of affordances that unfold as you decide, okay, I really want to be Fire Guy. Fire Guy is cool. Similarly, the weapon system, you've now got a true dual wield model that you can pull off combos at will. And your Big Daddy weapons require that strength that in the first game you were unable to use. So you've got access to the drill, access to the rivet gun, these things that players of Bio 1 were like, I want that, come on! And so this time around you can decide which one to invest upgrades in, and that changes the way that those things work as well. And then outside of the kind of gameplay, there's the Little Sister related choice. So in Bio 1, you were kind of a stranger that approached the Little Sisters and they had to decide whether they were going to trust you. And then you made your big, kind of moral sort of crucible based on how you felt about them. Well, in BioShock 2, as a Big Daddy with free will, you're family. And betrayal very much comes from a new moral context and from expectation. And so they inherently trust you, and you can adopt them and kind of carry them around and work as a kind of partnership. And if you decide to harvest them after that, then you are betraying the expectations of being a Big Daddy, what they think a Big Daddy is. And then finally, you asked about truly new choices. This time around, a lot of people said they wanted time with unspliced characters in BioShock 1. People who were sane and had a face that you could look at without going, ooh. And so this time you actually get to work directly with some of these adult characters and make choices about their fate that affects the overall story. And we never touched on that in BioShock 1.
And I think when we thought about, if we're going to make you live the Big Daddy fantasy, you need to feel like you're this unstoppable juggernaut. And if you feel too unstoppable, then there's no game. So there has to be somebody out there that's tougher than you. There has to be somebody out there who's different than you.
So there's a ton of speculation in Rapture about what happened to Jack and which of the big choices he made, and there's almost a religious debate going on about it. And so without spoiling too much about the characters involved with that, the thing that we're latching on to the most is that some of the little sisters made it back to the surface and conducted lives of their own. And one little sister was not like the others, and she couldn't leave Rapture behind. And she sort of disappears into the ocean one day, and then the abductions begin of girls aged about the right and shaped about the right size. And she begins to sort of jumpstart the Rapture ecology again by creating these new little sisters.
I think a lot of the ideas of the big sister was like, well, what is a good counterpoint to somebody who is heavy and strong and can bash anything down? And a lot of the needs for the big sister came from that.
What's great about the big sister is that her creation was from a lot of story perspective, and how she's intimately involved in the mystery of, what has happened to Rapture in the years since the events of the first game, and where did she come from, why is she doing what she's doing, and how did she become the big sister.
The big sister story is a really interesting story. It's not another outsider coming to Rapture and exploring it for the first time. It's not that. It's something much more intimate, something much more of an inner story of Rapture, of people who live there and who know that place in a way that Jack could have never known it.
BioShock 2 is supposed to drop in Q4 '09, and for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360.